Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Jacob. Please check out the track Patchouli Blue by the ambient doom jazz band Bohren and Der Club of Gore. Everything is slowed down to where you can really focus on the overtones and resonances of each instrument, especially the vibraphone. Well, I love anything with a vibraphone, but I'm kind of curious what doom jazz is. Although they did say it was slowed down. I don't know. Let's dive into this and see what's going on. What Bowen and your Club of Gore is bringing to the table today. That's just fun to say. Der Club of Gore. I'm really trying to get past this heavy reverb. It's kind of making everything just a hair bit too muddy. For analysis, anyways, for critical listening. The atmosphere that it brings to the table is very well done, though. Oh, that crackle. I think there's a spit in the saxophone, and it's just sort of. Such a good little texture there. really like the subtle snare. I can't even hear the attack. I'm not sure if it's using, it's gotta be steel brushes. But there's also points where it feels like the beads are just vibrating against the drum from nearby sound waves. It just happens to do it on the beat. It's so subtle, but it is beautiful. Theremin? Oh, that subtle pitch shift. What are these? All right. There we go. Wanted to make sure it was actually over. Um, the first thing I want to bring up is the synth. To me, it's extremely important. It sits Well, I kind of heard it in two places. One was like a foundational element, and that kind of shifted towards the end of the track where it felt like it was surrounding the rest of the music. I'm not sure what happened there. My perception of it changed though. But the idea is that it doesn't do much other than fill space. Wherever that space is spatially, whether it's around it to fill out the sound sphere or the foundation to provide something to be built on top of, its primary purpose, in my eyes, is to fill space. It doesn't really change much note wise, chord wise. It doesn't really change much timbre wise. It sort of just holds these minute-long notes out. Maybe there are shifts to it. Maybe there is a chord change every minute or so, but that is a very long time, and I would have to hear the moment when it changes. And that might be covered up by what other instruments are doing at those moments. What it does do, at least for me, is set the stage. It's kind of hazy, got a little bit of compression to it, and at least for me, it creates a feeling of dream state. It doesn't necessarily mean that I get the perception of being in a dream, but something akin to that. It could be just as much a drunken haze as anything else. Just something that can work against the idea that the story being told here is rooted in reality, if that makes any sense. Um, it could even just be the simple notion of exaggeration, being a bit over the top with descriptions when you're recounting a tale. And I think it's really neat that something that's completely static or primarily static in most of its execution can achieve so much in that already. Now, aside from that, we have the drums, which I think is the only other rather static instrument. We have a hi-hat close on 1 and 3, and we have a snare sound on 2 and 4. And as I started to talk about there in the reaction, the snare sound is, well, normally I'd call it a snare hit. It's not really that. If they are using steel drums, it is a very, very light attack on the snare. Or, sorry, steel drums. Steel brushes. Um, rather than a drumstick. It's a very, very light attack, but also more so than any sort of hit on the drum head itself. Most of what I get is the snare bead rattling on the underside of the drum, which honestly all you need for that is vibrations. I'd mentioned that it's possible there was a very large sound creating sound waves near to the snare, and it was causing these beads to rattle against the bottom drum head, and kind of create that sound. I don't hear an attack. I don't hear anything hitting the snare itself. I just hear this rumbling of the beads. Now, what this specific kind of drum tells me, much like the way that the synth creates a specific atmosphere, the drums do as well. It kind of gives me a smoky lounge kind of vibe. And when paired with the atmosphere from the synth creates this kind of element, like, I don't know, it kind of goes back to that hazy thing going on, where it creates this mystique, this otherworldliness out of what's going on with the rest of the music, which is kind of difficult to talk about. It's linear. It's a linear series of melodies, we get the saxophone, and then we get another instrument and then another instrument. They just kind of keep trading off who gets to play the lead lines, occasionally accompanied by one of the other instruments that comes and goes, while the drum and synthesizer continue to sit in the background. It almost feels like walking down, uh, I don't know, a street full of neon lights everywhere and seeing all these vices around you, and just one step at a time, kind of what the snare specifically feels like to me, kind of keeping your head down, one step at a time, just trying to get through this area. And it's just this hazy memory of sounds and lights and, well, also tension, which I think is the most important emotion that a lot of the melodies lean into. There is a strong sense of consonance through the melody lines, but it's not always there. There are some very, very spicy notes chosen, especially by our saxophonist, but the vibraphone leans into it occasionally as well. And given the slow pace of the song, you're really left to to dwell in these really crunchy dyads. Just a ton of dissonance and no release from them, no immediate release. As I've mentioned before, uh, jazz is not a style of music that is afraid to pick notes out from outside of the key and introduce a little bit of tonal dissonance, but it's usually used in passing. You quickly play the note and get off of it so that you can move to something more consonant. You get the spice of the dissonance without any of that nails on a chalkboard component to it. When you really sit and dwell on it, you bring in not just a little bit of spice, but, well, to keep the metaphor going, now you're just eating straight spices. It's not adding so much to the stew as overpowering it. And it's done for a specific effect here, of course. Like I mentioned, the song consistently moves between tension and release, but the release is sometimes denied through tension. In fact, there was one chord progression. I'm pretty sure I made a face about it, but I don't think I've verbalized a comment. It was in one of the last saxophone solos, and we came down to the end of this chord, and instead of resolving down to where I thought it was going to, where they were pointing towards it, we actually landed on the second, which is not a resolving chord. Well, the chord is based off of everything that's going on at the moment. The saxophone's only playing one note, of course, but we didn't resolve down to the root. We resolved to the second note, and I don't even know if it was the second note of the chord. It might have been a sharp second of the chord we were currently in, the key we were in. Um, it was just, it was so close to what I was told we were going to go, but quite far away as well. Um, it's almost like your parents drive you and they're like, "Hey, we're going to Disney World today, right?" To trick you to get into the car, and really they take you to the dentist, but the dentist is like, I don't know, a couple corners down from Disney. You can see Disney from the dentist parking lot, so like you're almost there, but you're also so far. That's what this felt like. It was a wild idea, and of course we just sat there in this court that was created, and really had to dwell with this concept of being led astray, and not just ending up somewhere we didn't think we were, but ending up in this dissonance and something very uncomfortable. Um, and this happens frequently throughout this track, where your consonant expectations based on chord progressions and melody flow and everything else that tells you the general idea of where a melody should be going if it were sticking with convention is undermined to introduce dissonance and tension. And it creates an antagonistic song. It feels hazy. It feels like it doesn't want to be remembered. It feels like it barely wants to exist at times. It is slow moving. It is plotting. It is constantly telling you one thing and doing another. But it also has really nice moments to it. They are fleeting and rare. They are some of the few moments that move on much quicker than you would want. Most of the moments that are more difficult to sit within, I feel we dwell on longer. But it's not entirely a negative track. This is definitely a song I would want to give another listen to. Some really neat ideas in it. It's a hard listen for sure, especially for me. I'm not a huge fan of dissonance. It has to be used tastefully, and I think they just crossed the line here. But I think it's also because they pair the dissonance with, well, an atmosphere that's a bit heavy, isn't it? So the dissonance ends up just amplifying that, whereas the consonance feels like it's barely helping the situation at all. But yeah, it's a difficult track to listen to, but I would not mind giving it another and seeing if I pick up any elements I might have missed on a first time. Those are my thoughts on Patchouli Blue by Bohren and Der Club of Gore. This is where y'all come in. What did you think of this track? Anything that stood out to you? Anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Let me know down in the comments. Above the comments section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. Takes you to this menu right here. You can find multiple ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord community. Man, what's the other one? Did I put like 3 things in there? I don't know. There's a bunch of links in there. I've forgotten my sign off. Go ahead and check that out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3. That wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.